Bueno, buenas tardes a todo el mundo.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Perdón por la espera. Hemos tenido un par de
Sorry that I kept you waiting. There were a few technical problems with my computer, which was not connecting properly, so we have had to change the computer. And for the demo, let's see how we're going to be handling it. But this is going to be my presentation, which is about asset auditing in Azure. My name is Juan Garrido. Everybody knows me as Juanito. And my presentation is to see how we can do pen testing on the Azure platform. In the UK and in the US, they do a lot of build review to configure a structure, and then the auditor is in charge of seeing if the platform is properly made. This is not work of hackers, but of auditors, as you will see throughout my presentation. And it is because the main manufacturers such as Amazon, Google, Microsoft, my ears are too big. They are in charge of all the back-end work, and throughout history of the cloud, there's not a lot of errors related to the core infrastructure. If you had read articles on the internet related to cloud, which is quite in fashion at the moment because of the Internet of Things, for example, the attacks made to that infrastructure has to do with the rejection of services and not so much with the core of the platform. Nowadays, there are 2 or 3 attacks that I am aware of in relation to the platform. So one of the questions that I would like to ask is, have you worked with cloud? Can you raise your hands, those who have worked with cloud? 1, 2, 3. One that has raised but then has put the hand down, so I won't be counting that. So it's just 3. Angelina Jolie, do you know Angelina Jolie? Please raise your hand. So those 3 who have raised the hands are the only 3 that have worked with cloud. Those who haven't handled cloud, this sentence, which is very famous, which says there is no cloud, it's just someone else's computer. So we are going to admin the infrastructure provided by a manufacturer. So the cloud is the isolation of a platform that can be provided by any manufacturer, because there's many of them who work with cloud. And as platform admin, we forget about the chaos that is doing a ZPD, which you need wires, you need cables, you need regulation, people to do the admin. You need to change the RAM and the disk, and that infrastructure costs money. And it is done by the company in relation to when they want to work with the internet. So the cloud comes when the manufacturer or the company, any size, they forget about that cost, about that large cost, and they give you the platform themselves. They give you the license, and what you have to do is to publish your service, and that's it. So that would be the fastest definition of cloud. However, there are also errors in cloud regarding infrastructure, and there's a lot of topics to cover. There's a lot of challenges on the IT side and on the security side, which have to be covered with cloud. For example, information at a legal level, as a part of the security team, I can analyze a website, server, Linux, Windows, and it's not really important for me to have that location of that service. But on a legal level, yes, for companies to know where the data is going to be stored is important. The data protection law here in Spain forces you to have the data controlled in the European Union, so the manufacturer has to have the provider, for example, in this case, Azure, Microsoft, they have to guarantee that the data is being stored in the geographical location. So with Azure, Amazon, Google, they offer several geographical locations where you are going to be able to have your data. Regarding maintenance, they are safe infrastructures. This doesn't change. The only thing is that the cost of physical infrastructure, we do not work with this. It has to do with the operator, with the provider, with Azure. So in this case, it would be Microsoft. So Microsoft would be in charge of where all the SQL or from Oracle or everything is secure. So this is in the hands of Microsoft. If I want to have 40 virtual machines in 2012, for example, those virtual machines where they are deployed, I can have 200 virtual machines, and those 200 virtual machines are going to be deployed with the latest patch. This would be in the hands of Microsoft. Regarding security, more or less the same. It's about 50-50. Microsoft is in charge of having a good network, and that is the segments are okay, that you cannot go to different countries. And as to answer to incidents, it's again 50-50. I have my infrastructure. In Azure, I have 200 virtual machines and 400 SQL instances all around the world, and I do not control if, for example, I have a user which is authenticating an SQL in Spain, in Málaga, and I have another user which is also doing the same from China, when I do not have any user from China. So in my company, there is not anybody working in China at that given moment. So in the things that I have to do is having the mechanisms which are adequate to monitor all this, and within Microsoft, within the cloud, within the manufacturer, they would have to be in charge of having the necessary tools in order to carry out these tasks. So regarding the cloud, it would be 50-50. Regarding trends, you have this graph. This is between 2016 and 2017. As you can see, the large companies, they have Azure and Amazon. And then at a residual level, there's DigitalOcean, IBM, who also have a cloud platform, Google Cloud, which is oriented to their own tools. There is not so much flexibility in comparison to Amazon or Microsoft. And with SMEs, the trend is also going up. So Azure and Amazon are the two that tend to be used the most in the market. About the architecture of Azure, it's not very different to the one from Amazon. As I have said before, it's 50-50. On the Azure side, they're going to admin the whole platform according to what you have in your contract. And then within your reach, you try to do the things as best as possible, because they monitor the actions that you are going to be undertaking all the clouds are going to monitor all the traffic coming towards the inside, and as a customer we have the opportunity of taking the admin of the whole platform just by a simple click, as the same as with Amazon or any other cloud. So the manufacturer also gives you access to APIs where you can connect yourself and you can expand the platform according to your needs. And regarding the models, they are not Azure is not very different to what Amazon is offering. There's one called on-premise, which gives you all the possibilities. And they say that there's a data center in Switzerland for you. And with this data center, you're going to be able to create, to delete, to do anything from that center. And then there's the infrastructure as a service, and Azure has got with all the area we're putting all the machines, the WAF, the firewalls, and then you do the admin of all the data, of the applications, of the operative system, or the network, and all this is done from layer 7. And then we have the platform as a service, and Azure gives you everything. They do the admin of the whole platform and also the electrical part of the network, and they give you as a small app where you can create a website or an SQL, etc. So there is a very basic administration tool which is going to allow you to do little things in the platform, but what you're going to need according to your service, to your services, because this is a pay-per-service as any other cloud. I want 40 SQL, so each SQL, it's going to be 2 or 3 power mets. So this is the architecture person who is going to determine if, well, in this case, how many databases are going to be needed. And finally, software as a service, where they provide everything. They manage absolutely everything, and you have a small admin portal where you're going to be able to do little things. Software as service could be summarized if tomorrow, if I want to create a website and for it to be available, I don't have to worry about how many SQL instances are needed by Oracle, and I'm not going to have the admin of a WAP. This is going to be done by Microsoft or Azure or whoever. So it's a small portal where basically you have an assistant. It's a web assistant who's going to tell you, well, if I need to create a website, what is it going to do? PHP, JSP, PHP, okay. Do you want in backup Linux, for example? Do you know how many SQL instances am I going to need, or do I just do a guess? Well, you have an assistant there, and then quite rapidly you have a website without the added problems of design, planification, architecture, for it to work, etc. We're going to focus here because it's where we can cover more topics, and this is the scenario that I have had in my computer, but I'm going to try to do it with this computer that I'm using now. It's a classic version of Azure along with a modern version of Azure, and this is the scenario that we have currently. I have a virtual machine, routing rules. I have a lot of elements created, and in the new platform, which is called Ibiza platform, I have virtual machines, I have SQL, a lot of information. I have machines that are patched, others that are not, etc. This image that you can see here is a problem that I came across about around 1 or 2 years ago, I can't remember, when I started working with the Azure platform. I was asked for an auditing, and I had to decline because I had no idea what I was doing. Don't know if you have seen the joke about the dog, which is on the portable, on the laptop, and he says, I don't know what I'm doing, or the monkey from The Simpsons who is doing like this. And 2 years ago, I felt like this. It was like the dog on the laptop with no idea what he was doing, and about Homer Simpson when he's asked about something that he doesn't know, and then you see the image of the monkey. So I once started with Azure with a server that I've got at home, and I was doing some testing with BitTorrent, and I was just doing testing. So I connected to the VPN of Azure. I didn't know it was happening, and I connected from an endpoint at home where all the traffic from all the services of my home come, and then we had that was from the server. So these routed to Azure, and there was a monitor, and Azure sent me an email after 2 hours of having done this, and I was really, really frightened. You're not going to be able to see it here because it's too far, but the message was saying that you're going to be reported because you are downloaded a content which for them is illegal, and what they said is either you take it out of our platform or we're going to demand you, and I'm going to report you. So I switched off all the servers, I switched everything off, and then I got another email because then the traffic stays as a residue in Azure, and again I had another email saying that they were going to report me because I hadn't deleted the traffic. So in the end, I had to start sending emails to Microsoft and to Azure saying that I was just doing some testing, and in the end, nothing happened. But basically, after this, Azure has got 2 or 3 administration portals. With one of them, they do the admin of the subscription, how much you have spent in the platform and how much the platform is costing you. You have an old portal of Azure, which is quite old, and another one which is quite new, which is called Ibiza portal. So there are 3 platforms, but they are going to they're trying to put it all into one, which is called the Ibiza portal. These are the ones that you have on the slide. On the classic platform, which is when Azure started providing these services, they have a lot of active directories and on the base, and then above that you can do admin for whatever you want. When you buy a service in Azure, Microsoft provides you with an active directory, and then there you can build your company on the internet. What happened is that kept on growing and growing, and the level was not enough for the old part, and in parallel they started to create a new portal with improvements. And the improvements were, for example, that the old Azure platform, there was not a management of the users of the role users. So you could all either be a user or a reader of the platform. So when you have a gigantic platform, if you consider that into 1,000 servers and 1,000 databases, when you want to do auditing, it's very difficult, and it was very difficult back then for a company to having to define a scope. Imagine a company here in Málaga who has 4 offices around the world. If an auditing is done in the service in Australia, with the old portal of Azure, you have to provide access to the whole platform so that the auditor could carry out his work. So that wasn't the correct thing to do. So with the new portal, you have an improvement in the management of users. Then we have endpoints. These are for people regarding in the legal area. For example, here in Spain, we have the National Scheme of Security, we have the Data Protection Law, and then they start saying, okay, where is your data? Where does it come from? Where are your computers? How do you do the backup of the information? And many of them didn't know what to say, and here is the answer. For Amazon, for Google services, for Azure, they provide you with a series of endpoints to know where the data is going to come in and come out. So in this area, the legal elements can build better services so that people in the sales department can sell the product much better. For example, for public administration, which has to follow a series of regulations and procedures, or it is for a private company which follows different regulations and different rules. So Microsoft offers a series of endpoints, and you can see there's no zoom, so I cannot put this bigger. For the Azure cloud, the login is different. If you're going to do the logging in Germany or in the part of government, which is an area which is oriented more towards the United States, that for the global government is just for the United States of America. Then in Azure, we have the identifier of the user, of the client, because you are renting the platform. So basically, when we deploy something in Azure and where we deploy something in Amazon or in Google Cloud, we must not forget that in the end, what we are doing is, if you forget about the cloud and you have the machine in the end, and with a series of services, you're going to have a machine where you're going to have several users at the same time, a user from China, a user from Germany, from Spain, from the United States. So for manufacturers, they need to be able to get all the users using that platform, so that then we log in the platform, or if they do it virtual way, it can be almost impossible to come out of that niche. So in Azure, you are identified with a number, with like a rental number, and that's where you're going to be able to administrate all your data. So you have a login, which is the one that you have here at the bottom.
Okay, I'd just like to switch. Oh, it's over here. There we are. Thank you. For example, I'd like to show you from the two portals. This would be the new portal. Since we're running behind schedule, I don't want to take too much time. So this would be the user portal. You can see that on this side we have all the resources that we could have on the platform. As I mentioned before, I've got various devices, Linux 405, 2008 servers, a 2012 server, part of network electronics also. So there are various network devices that I use to direct traffic from one machine to another, and also from one machine to internet. That's just to visualize this in terms of the Active Directory. It's a bit the same. These are all my users and all my groups. And I'm going to configure everything directly from a platform. If I wanted to generate a new virtual device, you can see that there's these small assistants here. And these assistants explain what they need, Linux, Windows, whatever.
Esto al final se traduce en el que yo, por ejemplo, un poco lo que veis ahí a la derecha.
So as you can see there on the right, this is basically the result. I can have different directories or different instances within the same platform, and depending on the instance where I'm located, which is what you can see at the bottom, the directory, directly on that directory, I'm able to integrate, configure, or add different options. Could we switch back to the presentation, please? Great. Okay, so that's been what I wanted to say about Azure. In terms of risks, obviously the platform is not risk-free. You can install what you want, but if you want to install 4 SQLs, and those SQLs are not fortified at network level, or a database and a front-end application, and that front-end may be ISP, or whatever you're using at the front end, well, this may be vulnerable to attacks, and the application will be vulnerable to SQL injection. That's the only difference, really. Then in terms of virtual machines, it's a bit the same. For reasons of compliance, you may be forced to ensure that your machines are encrypted in the cloud. In the case of virtual machines, in this case Microsoft, well, we'd have BitLocker or the encryption platform that we use, but Microsoft will provide support to BitLocker online. And in terms of Linux, well, it's the same. Linux also allows you in Microsoft to encrypt the virtual machine in the cloud and then allow the cloud to manage the backup keys of that encryption. Because encryption is good and it's excellent, for example, at local level. My device is fairly simple to manage because all I'm doing is managing one device, so that is an easy task. The worst that could happen is for me to suffer Alzheimer's and forget my keys, or one day go out partying and forget all my passwords. In fact, there's an unwritten rule, is that never change your passwords on Friday because you'll probably forget them by Monday. So at administration level, well, there may be a credentials leak. It's possible that someone may forget their credentials. It's possible that somebody's key or password may be stolen and used in another country. So it's not entirely risk-free. The platform does offer a series of mechanisms. For example, in the case of credential leaks, it offers double-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication, and then it's able to monitor, for example, who's accessing via different countries. You can establish rules and say, for example, this is just going to be the Hitler in me coming out, and I can say in this country I don't want anyone to access any of my information because I've got no users or no market or anything. So these are the type of things that you can do. Then in terms of governance, the platform does offer you a lot of information. People used to call me Big Ears when I was small, and it's true. I find it difficult to keep the microphone on. At governance level, Azure platform is able to offer certain mechanisms, such as a security center, which I'll describe a bit later, incident response center. There's an agreement between Microsoft and different companies in the market, different platforms and different services, that is. whereby a series of products are offered so that you can have those transparently on the cloud, also access to reporting. All of this is set up through best practices and ideas. But as I said, it's not entirely risk-free. At the end of the day, there are various risks, such as knowing who is governing the platform. As I said before, previously, Azure's platform didn't offer any way at user level for controlling that auditor. The new platform does allow you to do this. So, for example, to know when one user has more privileges than normal or than you would realize. Could we switch the screen, please? So can we flip over? Brilliant. Okay, here in the Active Directory, for each user you'll have a function which is called the role function, directory role and function. This indicates the privileges that that user has with respect to the platform. It indicates what that user will be able to do with the platform. Then at subscription level, we're able to view which users, which is via access control, we're able to view which users we have on the platform and their privileges. So you can see that administrators have owner privileges and other users are also identified there. Is anyone here who's administered direct administrator or Active Directory? Well, there's a big problem in the Active Director. That's namely the groups within the groups, the nested groups or embedded groups. This happens very often in large companies. And when we try to separate users from certain services, we end up adding them to certain groups. And those groups have certain members who then have further members and further members. And before we realize it, we are descaling and including a group of users that we believe have no privileges. We end up integrating those users in a group that doesn't have privileges, but that group is a member of another group with privileges. And once we realize we're including users within groups of users who have very high-level privileges on the platform. Azure is not risk-free, as I said before. And since it allows the inclusion of groups within groups, this fault or drawback can also be transferred to the whole virtual world. Switch back, please. I'm going to go as quickly as I possibly can. And the same occurs in the case of patch management. Azure allows you to configure and visualize all patches which may be missing in an operating system, if it's independent or whether it's Linux or Windows. And in the case of SQL, we can differentiate whether the database is encrypted, whether the data are encrypted, the operating system occurs the same, whether it's encrypted or not encrypted. I'll explain everything very quickly as we move forward. Since I'm not going to show you the demo of the tool, I'm going to move on directly onto the network. If I'm able to configure the platform in accordance with network rules, if you've done any firewalling tests, it's much of the same thing here. You see the rules from the top down, and it's possible that firewalling will have to be audited. This virtual device has access to 4483, and we'd have to determine why that port is open and what service is listening in the background. But there's a problem here, which is reflected in this slide. The problem's not so much the platform, as in the case of Amazon, Azure, Google, or any other type of platform. The problem is scaling. The problem is if we as auditors, or you as auditors in fact, are going to perform an audit of the cloud, it doesn't really matter what the name is. The problems, the scale and scaling. Because one thing is auditing in SQL and another thing is auditing in 3, 4 or 5 days 400 virtual machines or 400 SQLs or 7,500 users. And for you to be able to send me a report and to determine that yes, there is one virtual device in Eastern Europe which is missing 40 patches, and there's another device in China which has not been encrypted, or there's a SQL that's lost out there somewhere that's got so many ports open, and service refusal or denial actions may be executed. So the problem for auditors is scaling. There are a series of tools. We have a Nexus connector, for which you have to pay a little bit more for the license, which will provide you with a collector. The collector is good. It's pretty good, in fact, but it's focused very much on the old platform and hasn't been updated until today. This means that it's rather limited when it comes to trying to obtain information from within the platform. We also have a free tool which is pretty good, which is called Azure Explorer. And this is a tool in PowerShell which exports part of the Azure configuration directly into a JSON. And that JSON can then be imported wherever you want, and it will analyze all of the different options that it identifies. In terms of command line tools, well, for the Active Directory, we've got 2 types of PowerShell tools which allow us to interact with the platform, and directly for the Azure Resource Manager, we've got another set of tools. And for the more classic Azure development, we also have another portal, another set of tools. Well, this slide outlines automation problems. This corresponds to all of these steps in an audit. In this case, an audit of Azure. One thing I've discovered is that Azure Explorer or Azure PowerShell, which is an excellent tool for Azure audits, is only conceived for new Azure portals. So if there's any company, and there are many, that have already deployed and rolled out services on their old platform, that tool is going to be blind. In other words, it's not going to provide any information. With the connector, it's a bit the opposite. It's prepared for the older part, but not for the new developments. So if you, for example, have clients, or you work for a client with services rolled out on both platforms, well, then we'd have problems as auditors. And basically what I've done is developed a tool which I'm going to publish next month, I hope, and which you will not be able to see at the moment. And this tool allows you to perform an audit, or to audit the Azure platform, but conceived for 2 platforms, the old platforms and the new platforms, and allows us to export information in different formats. For example, XML, JSON, text, or directly in Office format, Excel, for example. All of the information on the platform can be provided in those formats. The good thing about this tool and the focus we've given it so that it attracts interest within cloud auditing is that you don't have to install anything, you directly download. I'm not sure if you've used Power Exploit or a Power Chain tool which allows you to perform post-exploitation of the platform. It's conceived much more for those purposes. You download PowerShell, you import it into the command line, and automatically you have a series of commands that you can use with the platform. It's based on API-RES, and directly with the password or with the identifier, the tenant identifier, and also subscription identifier. Well, you can do this directly with those variables, and there are many different options. This is one of the other things that we're trying to promote very strongly. For this, we use the ADAL library, which is Active Directory Authentication Library, ADAL, and there you have different options. It's got integration with .NET, Python, JavaScript, Node.js, Java, and PowerShell. Since it's been developed in PowerShell, you can connect directly to the DLL, and this gives you a whole series of functions which allow you to authenticate on the platform. A little bit about the basic format, and I can just explain a little bit about API versions. These are just some of the providers of the tool if you need to perform auditors at authorization level, which type of users are authorized on specific resources in the platform. Well, there are a series of options within the tool which allow you to do this in a very rapid and simple way. This is just an example of the information that would be returned by the tool per console. And there are a series of options that the tool allows you to use to export the data directly to an Excel file to consult the project manager, because it's possible the project manager doesn't really have to have any of this technical knowledge, and what this person may need is just the data and the results, and that's all. Okay, advantages of this is the complete independence of tools and commands from Windows, so you can use directly with PowerShell version 3. The results are very interesting, and also the support that's provided to Excel 2010 and 2013. And we're going to see if we can provide support to the latest version of Office. As I mentioned, this is something that's going to be published next month, if I'm given permission, because I'm working together with the Azure team at Microsoft. I ask them questions, they already have the tool, and they say, well, listen, Juan, this part of the plugin is not working very well. It's giving, let's say, results that we didn't expect. We're going to send you the new version of the API. And that's basically what I'm working on. Once I receive the latest data on this tool, the changes will be applied, and I'll upload it directly to GitHub. And to conclude, well, since there wasn't any sugar, could you please flip for the browser? Well, just to explain what the tool does. For example, here, it indicates that at this point there are two groups, or one group, for example, in this case, and two users. But if you go to the Active Directory groups, you'll realize oh, I'm not sure if there's the marketing part here. Here you can see that there's one group which is marketing, but it also belongs to administrators. This means that the users in the marketing group will have global privileges over the platform, which means they can create, delete anything that they want, basically, via these users here. If you go to SQL Server, the database part, well, the database section, you can see that this is just done via clicks. You just click away. In terms of encryption, well, you can see that this database is encrypted. And I'm not sure what this is. This is also encrypted. We'd have to check the database to see if it's encrypted or not. These are the checks we'd have to perform. Here we can see that the audit has been deactivated, and threat detection, there's a WAF above it directly, which allows you to detect any malicious SQL sentence. Otherwise, you may be blind if somebody tries to attack the database. So this is like a check stage. And at the review stage, we should try to inform or report that this database doesn't have these checks activated. In terms of virtual devices, it's a bit the same. We'd have to determine whether the virtual devices that I have rolled out are configured, for example, for network. If there's a network configuration which is not the desired configuration, whether there's any extension that I don't need within the virtual machine. If the machine's backup is configured and in which country the virtual machine would be activated. As you can see, none of these have been activated in backup. And on the Azure side, we have something called Security Center. And in Security Center, if you follow a best practices guide, for example, on the machine side, you can see here, well, the machine is located here, it's been monitored, the machines are organized or classified via patches, but there are certain vulnerabilities. And so, for each machine, it would indicate that the security configuration that that machine should have, let's see if the page loads, is as you would see here on this screen. There are some critical vulnerabilities of this machine. At audit level, the machine has a number of configurations that shouldn't be there. Basically, the problem here is scaling. If you've got to scale 70 machines at once, then the auditor is going to come across problems. So using this tool, you can directly access all of these checks and automatically export all of the functions in Excel format as if it was a project manager, and then we can directly filter according to all of the errors that appeared in the platform, and that report can then be sent to the project manager above us. And that's where I would end. I'm sorry that I haven't been able to show you the tool. And I'll publish this next month, so hopefully you'll be able to see it then. And that's all. Thank you very much.
Gracias a ti,
Thank
Juan
you,
Garrido.
Juan Garrido.